I love you guys.
Dance off, bro. I have the high ground.
Expecto Patronum!
39 days, 20 people, 1 survivor.
Tribe of Nerds.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tribe of Nerds. Excited to finish another Survivor Vanquish season. I'm here with the winner of Survivor Vanquish Season 12 Vanguards, Wesley Glass. Wesley, welcome to the Tribe of Nerds.
Thank you. It's nice to be back in this capacity this time.
Yeah, because Second Chances a year ago, we talked after that season and you came up short there, and now you're in the winner's circle.
Finally.
Well, to kick us off, so I guess just like going into Survivor Vanquish Vanguards, were you worried about like your reputation coming in, or like what were your thoughts as the season approached?
Yeah, when I heard that an all-star season was happening, one, I didn't know if I would get picked because I've already played twice. So I easily saw that I might not be top of the list because there are plenty of people who've only played once that need that opportunity. But there were people who were like, no, there's no way they could do it without you. And I was like, I don't know, they could still pick somebody else. So once they asked me, it was like immediate nerves because while my first game with Vanquish was a very long time ago, Second Chances was just last year. And I did a very good job in that season. And so I definitely was worried that, one, there could be people from that season that would already know, but also people who have seen that season. Whereas my other one, I doubt anybody was really around during that time that will remember specifically, especially since I only got like 8th. It might not stick out the things that I was a part of during that. So I was nervous about that. And then also being the host of Big Brother, there's a lot of crossover and players playing both. And that did end up coming in to play with when I saw the cast. There weren't a lot of people I had actually played with before, but there were a lot of people I had hosted before. So I knew all these people were going to have some kind of perception of who I was that I was going to have to work against, because even when I don't have a reputation coming into a game, I think very quickly I get sized up by people. Because like even Second Chances, there were people that did not know me at that point in time. And within like 2 days, we're already like, oh, you're so smart, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh man, it's already like, already happening. People are already like sharpening knives and putting me somewhere on a pecking order at this point. So yeah, I was excited because I have wanted to be able to close that gap. I've been playing orgs for 4 years and never won long form one, but I knew that going into a season with this caliber of cast was going to make that very difficult. So
for sure,
yeah, those were all the thoughts happening in the time leading up to it, and then definitely once seeing the cast the first night.
Yeah, so I mean, like going into that, seeing the cast, I mean, was there anybody that you were super wary of, or like people that you were kind of confused why they were there, or just impressions?
No one confused why they were there. But thankfully the people I was wary of the most were all on the other starting tribe. Because obviously I tore Sarah's alliance apart in Second Chances. So seeing her, I was like, great. And then Jen and I had worked together in Second Chances, but like flubbed it at the end. So I didn't know what that relationship could possibly be like. I know how Garrett plays. I played my first Vanquish season with him, and I've hosted him in Big Brother a couple of times. So like, I know that play style is very scary to be around. So thankfully they were all over there. The only person on my tribe that I had any real like in-game relationship with was Esther. And at least up front, she was very much like, want to put the old game behind us. And I had not actually voted Esther out in the previous season. Sarah was supposed to go that night, and Kevin wanted to keep Sarah around, so he swapped his vote to make Esther go. So at least there was that to like kind of say like, oh, I didn't want you to go the night that you went. So the one person on my tribe I kind of had that relationship with, I felt could be smoothed over easily. So I was lucky that my grouping was at least a lot of people that I did not have any kind of relationship with before the game started.
Right, right. That makes sense. And so you're on the Berserkers tribe, and you end up having this twist that gets dropped on you guys with both tribes voting somebody out, and the person that gets voted out gets swapped to the other tribe, like an Australian Survivor style twist.
Yes, I did predict before we went.
Yeah.
In chats before we went to vote that night, I was like, I bet you this is what's happening because it's all stars. They aren't going to get rid of 2 people the first night. But yeah, so that night we got kind of lucky just because Madison had not really started chats with anyone, and then had an issue with her Facebook deactivating, and being able to find her to start a chat was difficult. So it kind of made that first vote not a very difficult one. And then who swapped over was Nate, someone else who had played that season with Garrett and myself, and that I hosted in Big Brother Vanquish. So I thought we got the better end of things because I knew Nate was going to try hard in competitions, and I figured he would not be someone. It wouldn't just be an easy vote out. Like other people would want to keep him so that we could go after maybe other players that we did not want to keep on the tribe. And I do think he was successful in that. So I was happy to see him. We didn't really get to do much gameplay together.
Right.
Season worked out. But yeah, I think that benefited the Berserkers tribe that we got to do that and kind of split up what Marvin and Madison could have possibly been. And gain someone that was a good positive influence on the tribe.
Absolutely. And so yeah, so Madison gets swapped over, and then you guys do end up losing again, but you end up taking Marvin out for trying to vote with Madison at the previous vote.
Well, he missed that whole day,
right, and that
because after Madison left, Marvin, Megan, and I had started to chat in a little group. So if we could have done something that night, I would have, I mean, as seen in the way the votes went, I would have loved to have gotten Scott out sooner. Because while I never played with Scott, we came from the same original org community many years ago. So he had seen me play, I had seen him play, but we did not have like a close personal relationship of any kind, had never played together. And so I knew he was one of those people that would have that perception of who I was and would want me to not be around. So I definitely was looking to get him as quickly as possible. So possibly if Marvin had shown up,
right,
Marvin and I could have possibly gotten that turned around. Because then the next time we lost, the next day, with the water pouring. No, not the water pouring. The planks.
Yes, the planks.
When we lost with the planks, it was pretty easy to get people to flip over to Scott because some people at first were saying Megan because she hadn't been there, but she hadn't been there because she works in the OR, so she hadn't gotten off work in time. And so it's pretty easy to get that vote moved to Scott, which at the time was great because it's like, oh, I get to keep Megan around that I've been building a good relationship with and get out. I think the one person on this tribe that is currently gunning for me to go.
Right. And so, yeah, you had a lot of influence in Scott going there. So
yeah, I think Ben did as well. And I don't know like how much push it really took. I don't feel like anybody was like, no, like we want him to stay. I think people were mostly ambivalent. So it was kind of easy to steer in that direction by saying like, oh man, whenever we swap, I feel like Scott's someone that's going to flip immediately. So yeah, I don't think it took a lot of convincing, but at least when we first got back from the challenge, Megan was the name.
Mhm.
And Ben and I worked to try and get that moved away from her.
Yeah, yeah, and unfortunately, Megan had to leave the game.
Yes.
Very unfortunate. And Scott gets to come back in the game, which is very, very interesting. I I'm not sure what all went into the decision to put him back in the game, but
Yeah, I'm sure it was just to like twist and things were planned at certain times. They wanted the
right.
numbers to stay the same.
Mhm.
Could have just had a night where nobody got voted out, but uh, I understand why the decision was possibly made.
Mhm.
Um, but I think the only person that hurt was me specifically.
Yeah, yeah,
As we came back, it was me that he was after. I was the mastermind that he was telling everyone about, and he just tried to play mind games with every single person on the tribe. And then when we thankfully lost the
water
last
bottle cap.
water,
Yeah,
um, then we got to send him out again before the swap.
yeah,
But of course, he had to have his moment of not calling me out by name, but voting for me. So therefore, you could put it together that all the
right.
things he previously said must be referring to me. Um,
Yeah,
Even though I don't think that was the role that I was in at that point, I do think on our original Berserkers tribe, Amy was the best connected. I think she had the best relationship with everyone, or nobody was going to go for her. I haven't had a chance to like speak with her in depth, so I don't know how like intense that was, but I do feel like she had multiple smaller groups with different groupings of people, and she was getting all the information. She was sharing a little too much of it because it would cycle back around if you said
right.
something to her. But even with that, nobody was like saying, oh man, she's like spilling everything. We should go after her. So I think she was in the better position and like the decision maker. Like if she had decided like to side with Scott, then I would have gone out then. I don't know if there's much I could have done if she had pushed that on other people.
Yeah, yeah. And so before we get to the swap, I know you did have a really good relationship with Rede as well, and it is curious to like wonder how things would have planned out had you
Yeah,
and
yeah. So on that
Rede.
original tribe, I had made some good foundations with Amy and AJ and Ben and Rede. Esther and I like had an open chatting relationship, but just because of already how things were going on the original tribe, I was like, I don't know if I want to trust her with any too much information because she's obviously using information to create a little bit of paranoia and chaos, which was successful for her, but I did not want to be dragged into it. Yeah, Rade and I had not really watched his season too much. I followed a little bit because I'm really good friends with Chad, but mostly just following who got voted out every time. So I really didn't know much about him and Ben and Amy, except Amy I had hosted on Big Brother very briefly. So like their relationship was very interesting amongst the three of them of if they were going to be friends, if they weren't going to be friends, or are they
Right.
just saying they're going to be friends because it's early, but then at some point they're going to go after each other. Um, and that was specifically true between Ben and Rade, at least on the Ben side of things, especially after he was gone. Yeah, very early on, I felt like that was my strongest connection. So I was definitely worried, like when the swap happened, about not having that because everybody else I felt like I was on some kind of shaky ground with. Whether or not that was true, I felt like I didn't have full trust in anybody else, and he was the only one that I really had that with. So when we get to the swap and I see what tribe he's on, I'm like, ooh, like,
Right.
yes, they have majority, but I did not trust Esther, and I honestly didn't trust Nate because I didn't know that Nate had given him the extra vote at this point in time. So I was like, I could see Nate being scared for himself and taking advantage. I felt like Rede was in a bad spot, and I did contemplate should I pass what turned out to be the only pre-merge idol to him.
Yes. Yes.
But I was like, well, if he if I do, I feel like he's not going to think he has to use it. So like had Nate gone home in that first vote, then I think I would have given it to Rade. But I think if I had passed it before that, he would have had no idea and not played it, and then it would have been wasted. So losing him was definitely, as I mentioned in my final tribal council, the first big turning point.
Right.
So I was looking at merge, like he was definitely a part of that. So when he left, I was like, oh, so now I've got to go to these relationships that I feel like are shakier and try and build something up. And then I think that's what like the rest of the game was for me, like being on wobbly, shaky legs with all these people and not really knowing where to put my full trust for a few days. And then finally finding that later. But since I won, I feel like I can't complain about him going out. Because had he made it to the merge, like I could have possibly just been like so buddy and infatuated that it would have been very easy. Because that's when I get voted out. Like when I have fully put my trust in someone, that's when it's easier to get me. Which is if the people who had all these perceptions of me had studied what has happened to me in the past, they might have known that. It's not me getting got by the other side. It's always my trust is in someone and they betray. So probably in order for me to win, for the best that Rade left when he did. Who knows what could have happened? Like maybe over time, I would have also become his number one person. I don't know if I was at that point yet. With him, because he definitely is a very social player as well. So while I hate that he was gone and that we weren't in the game together anymore, I do think it like kind of put things into gear a little bit for me going into the merge, that I had to be watching out and couldn't be comfortable.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. And so you have your first idol that you found in the pre-merge, the only pre-merge idol, as everybody has found out, as you said, which is crazy. I don't think that's ever been done in a Survivor season before in any capacity.
Well, yeah, because it wouldn't be, I don't know how you would do it and it'd be fair.
Right.
Like, I guess if you did that second chances thing where it was at a challenge and everybody had the ability to get that clue ahead of time, then you could do it that way. But yeah, I don't know otherwise how it would work. Maybe on Micronesia, since it was on Exile.
Yeah, I think
that's only one.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only other instance. So
yeah, anytime it's been on Exile, then possibly. But yeah, it's a hard mechanic to make work in a real game, but a very interesting one to do in an online game where you would assume that both sides got one because both sides got the clue.
Yeah.
So yeah, that became like something everybody was afraid of for the rest of the game, and it wasn't even there, which is really funny.
And it definitely made an impact. Everybody thinking somebody else had it. So, and so you get swapped onto the Valkyrie tribe. It's you, Ben, and AJ, and then Crystal and Kenna. So walk me through the dynamics of that and just like what happened with Crystal.
So from my perspective, because then I heard people say things afterwards, so I don't think I have the full image of what everyone's relationships were, but I felt like I was in a really good spot because I had hosted Crystal and Kenna, so I at least like had a base relationship with them. Whereas I don't think Ben and AJ did. So they were AJ obviously had a weird relationship with Crystal because they were on the same original Vanquish season. Where he voted her out there and in Big Brother. So I knew they had like a weirder thing. And Ben didn't really have a relationship at all. So I felt like there was not a chance of it being me at any point. Like if I wanted to flip, I could. I didn't want to, but also Crystal and Kenna didn't seem to have a strong connection either.
Right.
And then through talking to them, Kenna was definitely the one that was easier to make some initial connections and conversations with. And it seemed like she was better situated on the original tribe, which might sound like a reason to vote for her. But when Rade went out, as referenced in my final tribal that night, I talked to Kenna because it just hit me really hard. I did not expect that. It has not been that way in any game before that I've been like moved to like crying in my confessional when somebody has left. So like that conversation with her, like I felt like, okay, we have a real genuine connection now that
Mhm.
will help in the merge. Whereas Crystal was telling us, oh, I got left out of the vote. I play loyal, but now I'm against them. With Rade out, knowing that Nate or Esther was going to go next, and Amy on a tribe where if they lost, she was gone.
Mhm.
It's like, well, this is not going to be able to be played on tribal lines at merge, so we need some kind of inroad
Right.
in this. And so AJ, Ben, and I had really bonded by being the only three people from our tribe. And then with Ben, he immediately confronted me when we swapped, because right before the swap, I had told Rade what I had heard from both Esther and Ben himself about Scott having tried this manipulation tactic to try and get Rade to say Ben's name. And Ben's found that out from Esther, that Rade knew that Scott was trying to do this, but hadn't told him that Scott was throwing his name out. And again, I was thinking about in the swap, if Rade and Ben go together, I feel like Ben is going to flip and make sure Rade goes home. So I gave him that information, and then he confronted Ben with it. I don't know if he told Ben it was from Esther. That's was like, because I was chatting with Ben. He's like, oh, Esther or Rade wants to video call. And I messaged Rade. I was like, please tell him you heard it from Esther, not from me. Yeah, so he like immediately confronted me, and I thought we like kind of squashed that. So I felt like going into the merge, we had a
Mhm.
nice like solid 4 that was hopefully going to pick up 2 people and then get out the others that we didn't want to work with.
Right.
So that was my like vision of joining the merge, was Kenna would help us identify some people to get on board, and the 6 of us would be able to take out the people that we were not interested in working with at the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Unfortunately, it was a very emotional goodbye for Crystal.
Yes, no, it really like I hated that is what had to happen, but I'm glad that like one, we went early so she didn't just have to wait around for it. I
Right.
told her we were voting for her, which is easy to do when you have an idol, because if she played something, then I would just play mine too, so it wouldn't be me.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's easy to give that sign of good faith to her. And she'd like worked really hard on our tribe, so I hated doing it, but just the way she had set up how she was going to go into the merge was like, I don't know how helpful this will be. And also finding out later that like her tightest connection was possibly Garrett. Then it was like, oh, extra good choice that she's not here, because Garrett was already strong enough. If he had had somebody else easily on his side at the
Right.
beginning, that would not have been good for my game overall.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So that's your only post-swap tribal. So then you're gonna end up merging, and you're gonna find your second idol at the merge. So you're gonna have 2 idols, and I believe you're the first person to have 2 idols at one time that you found by yourself. I believe Brandon might have had 2 that he played. Yeah, he got 2 gifted to him that he played, but you were the one to find them both by yourself.
Oh, good. Good.
Yes.
I didn't know that stat, so thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, so then I felt great because like I've been such a low place on Friday night, because that tribal, or on Thursday night, because that tribal had gotten delayed. So Rade went home. We immediately had a challenge, and then a double, and then Sing Nate left as well. So like that was a tough Thursday, and then Friday we won that cup thing. But I do think I've heard that Jen and them threw it so they could vote Amy out. So who knows if we would have actually won if they had been trying.
Right.
But yeah, so we didn't have to vote anyone that night, because that probably would have been difficult. I don't know. Because hearing later, it sounds like everyone had a good relationship with Kenna. So it seems like it possibly would have been her choice as to which of the 3 of us got cut.
Mhm.
And she had told me, I don't know if she told me that early or when it came, But she told me at some point that in one of her early confessionals, she listed me as someone she was too scared of being around, which was also not a thing that you want to hear from someone that you're expecting to go far with in the game.
Right.
So yeah, so like if we had lost again, I could have been sitting there being like, oh man, well, I guess we're all voting Kenna. And then it turned out it was me. So I'm glad they decided to throw it so that we did not have to be faced with that choice.
Yeah. And so you're at merge now from that, and this is where when you have two idols, it seems like everybody's kind of not giving you information, and this is where Phil is going to get blindsided. So
yes, yeah. So Saturday was just like a time to chat with people, and I chatted with all the new people to me in the game, which I had one like back and forth with Sarah with one video call Friday night. After we merged. And then I had some chats with Jen and Erica and Brandon and Phil on Saturday. But all that was just like feeling people out because, we had this full day where we didn't have anything to worry about. Then Sunday off. And then Monday, I was just getting nothing. And it definitely felt like even the people from my original tribe were distancing themselves from me and not giving me anything. And now I've like found out why that was happening. AJ was trying to put this wedge between Ben and myself, and Ben and Esther were getting in this thing with Brandon and Erica. So yeah, I really did not know where to trust. And Kenna was not giving me much as to like what was going to happen. And so I was contemplating with what I was hearing, thinking it was going to be a split. I was thinking about playing both idols to try and save me and AJ or Ben, whichever person ended up being. But they gave me so little information that I was like, okay, I'll just burn one, even if I don't need it.
Right.
And then hopefully they won't think I have the second one. Because the second one came out when I was very busy at work. So I thought that could have possibly been enough of a cover that people would not suspect that I would have it. And anytime in a game, I am always a don't tell people person because like, as it has been seen, especially in these new age seasons, like as soon as somebody says they've got it, everybody works a way to figure out how to blindside them with it. So I knew even though that I was a possible target the first vote, I was like, well, if I tell them, then that's just going to make it worse. So I was like, I'll just burn one tonight. Hopefully they won't think I have the second one. And then tomorrow, everything will be good. And then after, and I think what definitely exacerbated that was after the challenge, all the old Wolfskins stayed on a call together the entire time before the vote.
Yeah.
So there was no information being shared with me, so I wasn't getting any confirmation. No one even told me a name. Like
wow.
That has never happened to me before. I was not voting with any side. I tried to be like, I get the group of people together I wanted to, and I like sent a message like, please, like we need to vote together. Like if all of us vote Sarah and they split the vote, then she'll go. And I was just completely iced out. So I was shocked when Phil left. Not mad because like I hadn't spoken to him all that Monday. So like let's do a video call Monday. But he didn't try and get in touch with me. I didn't try and get in touch with him. So like it was obvious like he does not need me at this moment. So I'll focus more on the people who are actually talking to me in Brandon and Erica. And Jen had been talking to me, but she was trying to push Ben as a name to me. I was like, that obviously is not helpful to me to send home another berserker when the Wolfskins have such a big majority. So I did not want to be a part of that. So it's like, okay, I wrote Jen off at that point. I was like, Jen is going to be, she's working with other people. It's not me. So I will just have to focus even more on trying to make this Brandon and Erica thing happen. And what they're both really good at is making you think that it's possible.
Yeah.
Even after we vote out Phil, I like talked to both of them that night. I video called with Brandon being like, hey, like this hurt a lot. Like, I don't know to what extent this happened, but like I had spoken to both of them and given them this plan. Like I said, I want to vote Phil. because I had heard from Kenna that like that was possibly a good way to go. So I was saying him over Sarah. And exactly what they end up doing is what I had said I wanted to do, and they didn't let me do it with them.
Right.
And then the reasoning I think I got like 5 different versions of reasons from those 5 people.
Mhm.
And the one that I think was the most honest was Garrett's, where he's like, oh, we thought you had an idol and wanted you to burn it. Other people were like, oh, well, like we just heard that like you would be chaotic and you would scramble and you might ruin it. And I was like, this is character assassination. This is not how I play this game. So I don't know who told you that, but that is not what I do. I am a strategist. I am calm. I was like pushing up the emotions on Kenna that day because I was hoping she would feel bad and tell me what the vote was so I could know how to play an idol and it actually like matter. But I did not get that. But then she used that against me, saying like, oh, you were like so stressed out that day, so I didn't think that like we could trust you with the information. And how can I trust you when you don't tell me about things? And I was like, give me one example besides the idol, because I told no one about it. And I never got that answer from any of them. When they were like, oh, like stuff you say like gets around and stuff's like what? Give me an example. And they never would. And so that's why when Erica brought up at Final Tribal, I was like, I think this is unfair because I was saying things to people I trust and was trying to build trust with. And then they were immediately using it against me. I didn't say you specifically, but that's like part of who it was. Like things I was saying, like before we got to merge, I was saying that Jen could be a messy player because she can. And if we did come together, I didn't want people to think that I was going to immediately team up with her if they had seen our previous season.
Right.
And obviously, like on my I do not want to see list was Sarah.
Right.
So,
right.
And with Amy on my original tribe, who also has she has a more bitter history because like I have beaten Sarah both times. Amy has been vanquished by Sarah both times.
Yes.
Maybe 3 times, maybe 4, like even more than that.
Yeah,
lots of times. So Amy was already like starting this, like, oh no, Sarah's here. So like I was feeding into that as well. And like those things immediately got to those people as soon as we merged. So like whether that was coming from AJ or Ben telling Brandon and Erica or telling directly, like I was not the person that was doing this, but I was getting blamed for it as a reason as to why I couldn't be trusted. So that's what the first like 2 rounds of the merge were for me, was no one wanting to talk to me or give me any information. And so me begging the people that were at least speaking to me to include me, and them saying like, oh, there are people who want you to be a part of this. Like just these little breadcrumbs, like, oh yeah, there are people that want you to be brought in. But then I never was fully. Kenna did tell me that there was supposed to be a split. I do think she lied about the numbers, but she at least told me who the split was between.
Mm-hmm.
But then Brandon just told me to vote for Ben. And he's like, I can't tell you the numbers because we can't trust that you won't do something.
Right.
And I was like, how could you? Anyway, he would acknowledge, like, I know that sucks. Well, it's like, yeah, then change it. Like, you're the one in control here. You have the power. Why?
Right.
This. And I kept trying to play down to them. I'm like, you guys have killed my win equity at this point. Like, you have left me out of 1 vote. I've played an idol that was useless. And now, like, you're leaving me out of another one. Like, I'm not the threat that you built me up to be. And so what's great for me is they still chose not to include me, because had they at any point, it would have been the same thing as second chances. I would have helped them take people apart and then me out at 6 or whatever. The idol would have helped and maybe made it another round, but I do think I would not have won if they had let me team up with them. And so when Brandon wouldn't tell me that night, I was immediately like, okay, I'm done. But he also didn't tell me until there was like 15 minutes before tribal, which I assume was also on purpose.
Right.
So I was trying to sniff around about doing something that night to save Esther. But it just wasn't enough time to get anything together. And then the name Esther ends up coming up with is Kenna. And that's not the name I wanted, because I still had hope Kenna and I would be able to be a thing, because I saw it as Erica and Brandon saying that I was not to be let in.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, maybe if someone goes and that gets split up, we could come back together. So especially with the tribal that night being so emotionally driven and a lot of like things being said, I was like, with all that going on, I can't vote out Kenna. I also did not think that many people would do it because it was very close in that one. I did the vote I was told and voted for Ben.
Mm-hmm.
And then that is turning point number 2.
Yes, the catalyst.
Yes, that is the catalyst for the end game. Because Sarah and I had a conversation earlier in the day, but it was just too late to like get anything alliance going about how like we were both kind of in the same spot. And so that night she was like, do you want to chat? And I was like, I'm just drained now. So I just really want to go to bed. But I messaged Ben because I want to say, hey, just so you know, I was one of the votes for you. And I knew AJ was the other one because I had told him that was another thing that was weird. Brandon told me to vote for Ben. But then when I talked about that to like AJ and Garrett, they're like, what? We're splitting? So it was like, I'm just being put on this like duty to make it look to then drive an even bigger wedge between Ben and myself because now I voted for him. So I told Ben I voted for him and I was told to vote for him. And then he let spill everything that had been going on with Esther and him and Erica and Brandon. And he's like, got to do something. And thanks to him, we did it that night. We were on the phone and then he made the chat of the 4 of us. We hung up and got on with Sarah and Jen. And that just flipped everything. So I don't think there's anything that the others could have done that next day to dissuade me from the decision that I had made that night. But even if they could, what they tried was not good. Because I attempted to talk to Brandon the next day, and he was still saying that I had not proven that I could be trustworthy. Because obviously something weird happened because there was a second vote on AJ, or there was a second vote on Ben that AJ had made. And AJ was apparently lying to everyone that it wasn't him. So, and he was like, and you told Ben that I told you to vote for him. I was like, well, you did. So like, why would that matter that like, I voted with you, you were a part of it. He's like, well, that doesn't really build trust. I was like, I'm so over this. Cause I told him when he wouldn't give me everything, I was like, if this doesn't change tomorrow, I'm done. And he didn't change anything. So it's like, well, I've already decided I'm done. So that'll make it easy. And then we had that whole Wednesday off because we didn't want to have like people couldn't finish the challenge on time doing the obstacle course. So we decided to push out like the challenge announcement and the tribal to the next day, not realizing that was going to make it a triple that night.
Right.
And so I'd be interested to find out to what extent this was true. This ended up happening. Because another important point of like the snakes forming on that call was like it was 4 people that had no reason to trust each other. Cause like I had done things against Ben had done things against me. Sarah, Jen, and I obviously had pre-game relationships that were not all positive. So like what was going to make us stick together when very easily we could just like hope that, if we stick around, maybe one more round, that group will start to go after each other. Because there's a big risk to do it at 9 where we had to convince one person to come with us. And so that night I did something I've never done and was not planning, obviously, to do. But I told them I had the other idol. So that way it's like, okay, so if there's only one other potential idol out there, of course there wasn't, but that way we knew like if they play one and we know where their vote's going, then possibly I can save somebody. Then we hatched this plan that Garrett seemed like the most likely candidate because, of course, Jen was close with Garrett at the time. Ben was close with Garrett. And I knew Garrett's play style that he would not want to stick with the same 5 people. He knew at some point a flip was going to happen and that 9 was the time to make it happen, or it was going to be too late after that. And I knew from Garrett that AJ also wanted to make a flip occur, but he didn't want to do it immediately. He was going to wait another round or something. So I also thought Garrett would want to do it now so that he gets to be the one to claim it, and AJ is left in the dust. So I felt really good about that. And our plan was to make it seem like Garrett was the uniter, because if he felt like he was 5th in a group of 4, then like he could possibly immediately go back or something. So I haven't talked to anyone to see if they actually told him like, oh, everyone's going to pretend they don't know. But like, so yeah, I don't know all of the dynamics between everyone in the five that would have led to that. But at least what I was playing was still like, well, I can't trust Sarah, and like, who knows what Jen will do? Like, I feel good with Ben. So I'm going to try and talk to everyone today and see if this five can become a thing. So I don't know if Garrett knows that we were a four the night before or not. But it does seem that I don't think that any of them spilled that the idol was on our side either. So at least not for that round.
Right.
Because then like Brandon goes, can exhale.
Yeah.
And then we immediately have another challenge and a vote. Then it's like, okay, we get another one, get Erica, the other one that like had great conversations with, but obviously was never going to pull me in because even as we were going to tribal, she never pitched anything to me.
Mm-hmm.
I know she pitched stuff to Jen and to Sarah, trying to make an all girls thing, but never even tried to get me to be on her side.
Right.
And that was one thing that made the snakes work that night, at least, was that everybody was sharing everything that was being told to them. So that way the trust was continuing to build. And
right.
with Garrett, because Garrett told us like, oh yeah, all of them just had a call. Whereas I was getting from AJ and Kenna, like, oh, I haven't heard anything. The five aren't even together talking about it. And Garrett's telling us the exact opposite. So that's when it's like, okay, done with these other people. And so it made Eric an easy vote. And then we have another one, which I do not think we were expecting that to occur. So thankfully I win that immunity because then that I didn't have to waste my idol that night. And I knew I was going to be guaranteed to make it to the final week since it expired the next day. And this is the one place where I wish I had been a little more assertive because I wanted to get Garrett then because I saw him as a threat then, at least in challenges as well, than Kenna and AJ. And I still wanted to have this relationship with Kenna. But we had to stay on camera afterwards. Like we couldn't have any calls. And now knowing that like Jen really wanted Garrett to be around, I think she would have poo-pooed it even if she had tried to look at the chat and talk in it. But like I had Ben and Sarah. So like if the three of us had voted Garrett and Kenna voted Jen, like we could have gotten to a tie and then possibly
someone would have flipped
Garrett home.
Yeah.
But oh well, so it didn't happen that night. And then the group of five has now been obliterated because Garrett has successfully flipped and become a part of the group. And that leaves AJ seemingly the odd man out, but knew it wouldn't be that easy because the next day it was like, oh, so if neither of them win immunity, we can do a 2-2 split. And if one of them has the idol, then we can just vote the other one out on the revote. Easy. Of course, AJ wins, or Marcy wins immunity, and AJ receives it. So then it is the other one that we should be voting for. And I have my idol, so I know I'm not going.
Right.
And that is when the snakes fall apart because Jen never really had a good feeling about Ben, and she definitely wanted him out. So I knew there was no talking to her to change that. I was hoping Sarah would still do it and I could get Ben too, but Ben was too afraid and Garrett was saying, no, everybody's going to vote Jen or whatever he had told him. So Ben felt like he was in a good spot. And I tried to get AJ to vote Garrett because I thought he would want to get somebody out that was clearly going to win. But I know AJ then immediately told Garrett I was saying his name because Garrett comes back to me and says, you can stop fishing about if I have the idol. I'll see you at final five. I was like, okay, whatever. But I still had to call his bluff. So I still voted for him because I was like, I don't care. This way, I don't vote Ben out if that's what everybody's doing. And I don't try and help Ben and vote for somebody else in my group. So I still voted Garrett, and turns out he didn't have the idol, so we should have got him. But like, I think him having to do all that also made it much easier for him to be the next vote.
Right.
Because it does seem like Sarah had a little bit of a relationship with him. Jen had a big relationship with him. AJ and him had a relationship. So when we get to 5, thankfully I win again, so it can't be me targeted because I would assume at any round now that like they went after Ben that like snakes could like snake. I don't think Jen would have done it, but like Sarah, if she had gotten the opportunity to get me, even though we got to work together, and I think we both really appreciate that, we both still wanted to get each other in the end. Like we're working together now, but if we're not in the finals together, we're wanting to make sure that we're the one who succeeds. So thankfully I win at 5, so it has to be one of them. And Garrett was the one that made more sense as a threat to win the game. And as, even though like he never does super well in challenges, but I also think he doesn't do well on purpose. So like if it mattered, I feel like he could really turn it out if he wanted to.
Yeah.
But also we didn't know, like, is Final Four fire making? Is it a vote? So like if Final 5 is the last vote, we've got to take advantage now.
Oh, absolutely.
If it's a challenge tomorrow, it could be something and he wins his way into Final 3 and wins the whole thing.
Right.
So we get him there, and then Final 4 with AJ. I knew Jen and I were a solid 2. Like there was nothing that was going to break us up. We'd already discussed if it was fire making, if it was Final 2. And so even if Sarah had tried to flip there, I felt confident we were going to tie it. And so I don't know how tempted Sarah was. I know she did at least talk about it with Jen.
Yeah, I can speak to it. She brought it up to Jen, and Jen did say like tell Sarah don't do it because Wesley's going to be heartbroken if you go for him. And so she basically convinced Sarah not to vote for you there. So
yeah, because I tried to do a lot of like emotional building up, like look, this beautiful story, the 3 of us all from second chances getting to do this together. And like all of our games like up to this point have like been similar. Whereas like if we let AJ in, his alliance could all vote for him because they're mad at us. So like we don't want him to possibly be there. And I also said like we also wouldn't want there to be a fire making opportunity because that person then gets to add that to their resume. So I don't know how much that played a role in getting to that point, but I do believe Jen is the one who hit it home to make sure that Sarah did not get me.
Right. Yeah.
But like I was solidly hoping for Final 3 since we had worked so closely together. So then finding out that it was going to be 2 was devastating. And Sarah could not do the challenge if we did it the next night because of work. And they were not going to push it late another time for her. So decided to just go ahead and do it. And I'm glad we did because I would have been so stressed if I had to wait that entire extra day. I thought like if Jen wins, she takes me. If I win, I go. So I think Sarah's the only one who would not take me in this scenario. Even though we both tried to do that earlier in the day, like she told me that Jen had tried to throw my name out at some point. And I told her before, it's like, oh, just so you know, I'm really considering that conversation we had earlier about what you said. So I tried to plant it that like, hopefully if she won, she would take me, but I was doubtful. Because she and Jen had been in it from the beginning. So, and again, both of us would want to get each other out. So I was able to win that final immunity, which was like a nice moment to come away with the most immunity wins of the season as well with 3.
Right. Yeah.
We were tied 2-2-2 at that point. So I pull out that last one, which my quads hurt for like 3 days after ducking 20 times under that tape. And at that point, there was no like question in my mind. I had already promised it to Jen. I knew I wanted Jen to be there. So I let Sarah say her piece and I tried to make it look like I was considering it because I knew a jury vote was happening after that. So I at least wanted her to know that like I did appreciate working together and it was a hard decision. But I was not even thinking about it because I thought not only had I already like discussed with Jen and didn't want to break that promise, with Sarah, I thought she possibly had a stronger argument than Jen would have, at least in like a similar argument to mine. And I also thought some of the votes that I might get would go over to her. Like, I don't know if Esther would have voted for me if Sarah was there. So I saw Sarah as someone who might have some more guaranteed votes on jury than I would. I don't know how that would have actually turned out if it had been the two of us against each other, because I feel very confident in my final tribal council abilities. But yeah, at least in the moment, that felt like the better thing to do. And like what I said then, also story-wise, like Jen and I had tried to do this together and failed previously. So like the redemption story for Sarah was the fact that we actually trusted each other and voted together for the majority of the merge.
Right.
But for Jen, we had a larger story that we needed to bring back together. And so, yeah, I just wanted to be able to be sitting there with her. And then that gets us to Final Tribal.
Yeah, amazing. Like, this is been amazing. You've walked us through everything. So we get to Final Tribal Council now. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, going in, what did you expect the vote count to be between you and Jen? Did you expect like a large gap between jury votes, or did you think it was going to be close?
I don't know if I had a full expectation before getting to tribal, because I just honestly did not know. Having been on juries and gone to like jury roundtables before, I have seen like a jury poisoned against someone, and I didn't know if I would really have any jury cheerleaders.
Right.
Possibly Ben, but like I don't think Ben had a lot of pull with people after his relationship with many of the people on the jury. So I really had no idea how they would feel coming in. But then all of their questions were really good. So I was like, okay, so like they're actually considered, like this is an open possibility. It's not just we were all with Jen from the beginning, because the things and another reason I wanted Jen there over Sarah was our games were very different styles. I know Jen did an amazing job being in the middle of things, as she highlighted, and she had options. So if people wanted to bring her in on something, she had had all these open doors to be able to make sure it was never her, and nobody really ever went after her as a result. So that is a great strategy to get to an end of a game. So very easily that could have been the one that they chose to reward. But seeing that the questions were open, I was like, okay, if I can present this as well as I think I can, then I believe that my presentation of my game in this moment will be more likely to sway people to vote for me than what Jen might be able to do. Because I mean, public speaking is part of my job,
right?
Which is another reason that people tend to not want me to be at this point in time, because they know that I can have this kind of performance. So I figured if I had a good final tribal performance, if there were people that were teetering one way or another, they would be more likely to teeter towards me than her. And I do think that's what happened. Because I assume coming in, I feel like Ben was a lock to vote for me since he and Jen were not really close. And then I feel like Sarah was not going to vote for me. I don't think Phil would have voted for me regardless of what I said. So I feel like she had at least two. And then I felt like everybody else was a toss-up for us to compete for.
Right.
Which made it exciting. So I had no clue what the vote count would be. I'm glad that we both got votes. I'm glad that it was not just one vote for her, that it was closer. But I'm definitely also glad that it was not just a one vote difference, because it was already stressful enough sitting there waiting for them to be read out loud. But yeah, so I am pleased with the turnout, but I just made sure I'd never write everything down that I would want to say. I've done finals in 2 minis and a alias game where we just had to type everything out. But I had a general idea of the things I wanted to talk about, and I made sure to listen to Jen's answers. So if she said something that I thought wasn't my perception, that I could then call it out in a later answer. And then with my final, seeing what had already been talked about a lot, well, let's not harp on that. Let's bring up other things. And one thing I really tried to focus on was like letting each juror know that I appreciated my relationship with them, even if we didn't work together. So making them feel seen as a player in the game, because a lot of times juries come in and it's a lot of like, well, you could have kept me around and worked with me. And like they make themselves the main character, even though they're
Right.
not
Hmm.
anymore. So I wanted people to realize like how they were a part of the story, like giving them a starring role in what happened and building and showing that connection I built with them, even if they never trusted me to vote with them. And I think I did a good job communicating that to them. So hopefully those were some of the things that helped like sway people in my direction. Because since I didn't get to watch Jury Speaks, I really don't know what was said. The only thing that was brought up from that was Erica's question, which I was glad she asked it because I thought it really helped with me getting to answer it and kind of push back against it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that really helped me of someone else saying was Ben pushing at Jen for playing friend Viver, which I don't think she necessarily did. But then I realized like, oh, I didn't get to start this game with anyone that I had a relationship with.
Right.
So I can really poke at that like she did get to kind of rest on some relationships she had, whether she wanted to have them or not. Like she was on a tribe with Kenna, that's like one of her best friends outside of the game, and Sarah and Garrett and Steve. I was on a tribe with Esther that I had like, even if I didn't vote for her, I was part of the reason she left the only game we were in. So I think that like message of resilience and grit and strength plays a little stronger in a final tribal council than like, oh, I got to like sit back and be in the middle of everything and kind of choose what I wanted to do. Had she presented it differently, then it possibly could have overpowered. But I also like know how to get emotion into things. So like I know I'm an easily emotional person. So if I'm able to like connect to that, then like that also was part of what was going on. Did I plan to tear up like 3 times, I think, during it? No, but like the questions they asked just made it perfect. Like, what did you learn in this game? Oh, what an amazing question to be able to like showcase some major personal struggle and how you were able to bring something out of it. What mistake did you make? And did you and what did you do when you made the mistake? Another great one, showing growth, showing how you pivoted somewhere. And I think those are the questions that really helped me differentiate myself from Jennifer, where I think a lot of her answers kind of fell one note because she just had like the same kind of thing for every answer. Like, oh, I had these good relationships, so I didn't have to worry because I had all these options. I got to have all these peaks and valleys and a like more comprehensive package to present. And I think that was in the end the more compelling argument, and like wrap that up in some good prose and emotion. It makes it very difficult not to vote for.
Yeah, and I mean, you did a great job. So, I mean, congratulations are in order. I mean, you won an all-star season that deserves a lot of props.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, that's the other reason is like now like losing second chances, oh, whatever. Because now I've won like possibly the hardest season to win, at least up to date, the hardest season to like get through because everybody was judged on having some sort of caliber to them to be on the cast. Whereas second chances is like, oh, this person didn't get a fair shake.
Right.
So this was one where it's everybody's like, this person has done something in a previous game that makes them worth being on an all-star Game Changers cast. And it definitely felt that way from the beginning. We got a little lucky with some unfortunate circumstances early on, but once it hit swap, it was very clear that everybody was here to win. Everybody was out for blood. And the reputation I had was definitely something that initially was used against me to like neutralize me. And so to find a way to get around that, I think I said, like, if you like asked those 11 people at the Merge Tribe, how many of you want Wesley like at Final 3, at Final 4? I have a feeling the answer would have been like 0. I don't think that I was in anybody's at that point's end game plan. Possibly before Renee won't tell me when he was going to vote me out. So I don't know what he would have done when he would have tried to cut me. But yeah, I don't think that anybody wanted me there. So the fact that I was able to still do that, and that was one of the lines I really enjoyed being able to say, like, I got to show you what you were afraid of. Like, this is what you were so nervous about that you wouldn't trust me, and I did it anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just makes for a great game and a great story, and I can't imagine it having gone differently now. So I don't have to do any of the what ifs because I won.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
second or third or fourth, it'd be like, oh man, like, oh, if only Rade had made it to merge, or if I had not played the idol that first time and saved it and had both of them, like a whole game of what ifs. But this one, as soon as it was over, it's just like, oh, I get to exhale, like people coming at me in the chat and stuff. Like, who cares? I won.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it will not make
Exactly.
me feel bad about any decision I made at the game because it led to a win. So
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and so now with this season concluding, it seems like the end of an era, so to speak, because, this is closing up a lot of arcs for people. And so going into like this new, I guess, new era of Vanquish next year, I mean, what advice would you give like future Vanquish players?
oh man, that is a good question. Anytime that I come into a game, regardless of what like setup it is, if it's returnees, if it's all brand new people, uh, you have to focus on building relationships. I think we saw that a lot in Final Tribal Council. There were a
Mhm.
lot of people that accused Jen of not having some kind of relationship with them. Because I think a lot of people try and jump really quickly into like, we're going to work together. Let's do something, like trying to make alliances, but not having them built off of anything. So you really have to use those early days to like just get people to want you to be around.
Mhm.
Because even if they're scared of you, if they like you and you're a good time and you make them enjoy being a part of the game, then when a difficult decision comes up and it's voting you out or Ben, like then maybe they're going to keep you another round because it's like, oh, at least like, he talks to us. So
Right.
like that is what you really have to focus on. The social aspect of the game is so important because if you don't have the social aspect, you can't do anything with your strategy,
Right.
which was shown when like in the first vote, I did not have the social capital to push what I wanted because I tried and it just wasn't happening.
Mhm.
Or people took what I wanted to do and did it anyway, just didn't include me. But yeah, you have to have that social base or at some point you're going to be an easy cast off. So make those relationships and make them built off something more than just like good morning, good night, how was your work day? Like get to know people. And that's also what makes the game, what makes it fun afterward. When you've had these fun relationships and the game's over, you've got friends for life. There are people that I met 4 years ago in games that I still have close relationships with because of how we played the game together. And then
Yeah.
there are others that I don't because we did not get to develop those. So you've got to focus on that. And if you can get that, then the other components of your game can come together. If you come in and try and game bot it, or you think you're just going to win challenges, or you think your strategy is going to be superb, so of course people are going to do it, it's not going to work out. This is a game about people.
Right.
And if you don't have that social component to it, then even if you make it all the way to the end, you're likely not going to win. If people don't want to see you be the winner, then that could go against everything else being correct. So that would be my biggest advice to people. And don't travel and work in the middle of a season because it makes it even worse. I can't believe I played this game from like 6 venues. It was exhausting to do that, but I hopefully added some like extra flavor for people watching. It's like, what will my background be tonight? Will it be ugly yellow flower wallpaper? Will it be my apartment? Will it be my parents' home? Who knows what you get? But that tends to happen almost every time I play. I always end up somewhere, but this one was, I had 3 separate groups of 40 people during the 4 weeks of the game. And I
Mhm.
went home to a football game. So it was a lot of traveling and dealing with all those relationships on top of dealing with these. So those would be my advice pieces. I look forward to seeing what the new era holds, because I do think, like you said, like this wrapped up the first 12 seasons. And so I'm looking forward to what happens with 13 and beyond.
Yeah, yeah, and who knows, someday we may have a winners season or
Yeah, I talked to Kristen immediately after. I was like, this is my like no thank you to return. And she was like, well, we might do a winners one at some point. I was like, if it is far down the road, like in many years, and people might forget what I did here, then possibly. But
yeah.
I think coming into an all winner season as a winner of all stars is even worse. And yeah, I don't think I would be able to if everybody knew what I did. Like if it happened right now, I don't think I could do well. If it happens in like 2 years when there are like 10 more winners, then maybe I'll come back. But that's the only thing I'm coming back for. Or if there's some like blood versus water thing and I have somebody that really wants to do it, then maybe I'll do that. But if I did that, it would be sole focused on helping somebody else win.
Right.
Now that I've gotten mine, like this can't be improved on.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously winning Winners at War could be a big improvement, but like my org career has its like crown jewel.
Yeah.
So
the bookend. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't feel like I feel sated. I don't need to go back out there because I've been able to prove that I can do it.
Absolutely.
And so now like I can go back to the running things side and critiquing other games side and not have to put myself out there again. But if the opportunity comes, I feel like even the people who play the real one say the same thing. You might say no right now, but then the second you get asked, it's like, oh man, should I?
Right.
So I won't close the door all the way, but like it's very close.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been great, Wesley. Getting to pick your brain for like however long it's been, what, an hour?
Yeah. An hour, yeah.
Yeah. So, and so with that, we will see you all next time for the next season on Tribe of Nerds.
And in the meantime, Big Brother Vanquish coming back next month.
Yeah.
Look for apps on the page if you want to try a different style of strategy game and see me in a different light. I'll go back to hosting instead of playing. So
absolutely.
Please apply.
Definitely apply for Big Brother Vanquish. Yes. And with that, we will see you all next time on the Tribe of Nerds.